Look, I guess it was always going to be a bit tense after the shooting down of the balloons. Unusually, Wang Yi, who's not known for his flair, actually probably had the best line where he said, there's lots of balloons in the sky, you're going to shoot down all of them, which, made it sound a little bit absurd. But I guess the serious question is for the US. I mean, if this has been going on for years and they've been spying on you for years, why on earth are you only doing something about it now?
That is,
So it seems
yeah,
odd.
it's a really good point. It almost feels as if the US has decided to take a different tack with regard to China's surveillance program.
I mean, certainly the Chinese excuses that it was just a weather balloon that blew off course. I mean, no one's taking that terribly seriously. And definitely on the Chinese side, they have reason to feel aggrieved. I mean, the US, in terms of its electronic surveillance of China, is far and away superior to anything China can manage. I mean, the US spies them up, down, in and out, any way you can imagine. Until they got sloppy, they had huge amounts of human spies there, but they used the same protocols in Iran as they used in China, which is probably a bad move. So they lost a lot of their spies then.
Interesting. All right, let's come back to some of these protests. Now, these older Chinese are getting out into the streets, very unhappy about these changes to the healthcare payment. Take us through what is actually the argument for these cuts.
So, I mean, it's again one of these classic things with local officials in China where they just completely mess up the communications and people are suddenly finding themselves out of pocket without being told of it in advance. What they're trying to do is move them away from these sort of personal accounts towards public accounts, which in theory means if you are sick and often see the doctor, you will be slightly better off. But if you only go occasionally, you're going to find yourself worse off. But none of that was really communicated. It was just suddenly, rather than getting 250 yuan back, you're getting 80 yuan back. So of course you're going to take to the streets. That's quite a lot of money for an elderly person in China.
Is it motivated by the blowout in costs, at their very rigid, extreme way of sort of constantly testing for COVID, having shutdowns, and obviously the flow-on effect it's had on the economy?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see this in other measures, like they're desperately trying to push out the retirement age to stop people from retiring and claiming their pension. Local governments are absolutely devastated by the 3 years of COVID lockdowns, the amount they spent on quarantine, on testing, and at a time when land sales, which was really what they were living off, completely dried up. They're required to pay for all this stuff. And the central government basically last year said, look, we're not going to dip into our pockets for you guys anymore. You've got to work it out. So yeah, they're broken. They're finding ways to not pay out. It sounds a bit like a Ponzi scheme. I mean, that's why people are so angry, is because they can see the money in their account and they can't access it. And they're being told, oh yeah, well, that's not your money, even though clearly 20 or so years ago, they were told clearly it was.
Yeah, which is so frustrating. It is interesting, though, that here's another example in this tightly controlled nation of people getting out onto the streets and protesting. Is this something that she's going to have to deal with and manage?
Yeah, well, certainly I think they drank their own Kool-Aid in believing that they had all of these sort of things under control. First the young people, now the old people. But if anything, the old people scare them a lot more because the old people are better at organising. The old people have revolutionary heritage. I mean, many of them are older than Xi Jinping and they can say, look, you young upstart, we can stand here in public and sing the Internationale. We were there at the revolution. We fought your pointless war in Vietnam. We have reasons to, be passionate about communism. So why are you dudding us?
Yeah, and that's such a great point. As you say, as with the blank paper protest against the COVID measures, that them singing the Internationale is, as you point out, a very difficult one for Xi to argue against. Do you think they are concerned ahead of China's annual parliamentary gathering, which is early next month?
Look, it's certainly a time when usually zero dissent is brooked. This is the one time of the year when you basically round up the usual suspects and make sure nothing unexpected happens. But as I said, old people scare them. If you think back to Falun Gong in 1999, 24 years ago now, that was old people. They surrounded the entire government compound. The security services had no idea until 3 in the morning. They had to tap Jiang Zemin on the shoulder and say, excuse me, sir, you better have a look outside. And it was old people, because they were old previous cadres who knew how to do things by Moscow rules.
Yeah. Talking of old people, it's going to be potentially out with the old, in with the new. What sort of changes are we expecting at the top when Congress starts in a couple of weeks?
Look, I think it could be one of the dullest ones ever. I mean, that's quite a high
statement.
benchmark. It's quite a high statement, but it will be. I mean, we'll have the mandatory we beat COVID kind of victory march kind of speech. We'll have endless talk about struggle, but mostly it's going to be about the economy. Xi Jinping, or maybe the ChatGPT version of Xi Jinping, wrote this long article about the economy about 5 days ago. And it's clear that's what it's mostly going to be about. Can we get the economy back to normal? Can we get some investment happening in this country? And can we de-risk the economy, which is about the real estate sort of bubble bursting and this huge amount of local government debt that this issue is really about.
Yeah, one to watch. Good to chat, Graham. Thanks so much.
Thank you.